Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another episode. A new week, new energy, new vibes. And thank you so much for tuning in once again. For those who are listening on audio, please take a moment to rate the podcast. For those who are watching on YouTube, please subscribe, like, comment, share. All of those things. My producers will appreciate me for finally remembering to say this out loud. One of the things I purpose to do when I decided to do this podcast was to take the time to highlight people, institutions, foundations, facilities who are championing in the sexual reproductive health, mental health spaces in Kenya. Because as a clinician, as a doctor, I'm very solution driven. We are presented with problems and you don't feel okay or right until you find a solution. So that's one of the things you'll notice that I'll do in some of the episodes. We'll sit and talk about people and the work they're doing, advocates, people who are change makers, people who are starting or managing companies or foundations that focus on making a change when it comes to SRHR issues specifically and add-on related mental health issues. And that's what we're doing today. So I'm here with my big sister.
Oh my God.
One of the reasons why this podcast even exists, and I'll keep repeating this out loud. I'm here today with the lovely, the amazing, the powerhouse that is Janet Mbugua.
Thank you. Dr. Claire.
I know, right?
Keep going.
At this point, I could go on forever.
Yeah.
And today we're going to focus more on the work that you're doing and what drives you and how you arrive. Because all of us pretty much watched you on TV. Mm-hmm. And we used to look at you for the outfit inspo and we're like, oh my God, she's so tall and so elegant. And
then you met me and I'm not that tall.
And I'm like, what also in the juju is going on? Because, okay, it's true. Anyone who meets me goes like, oh, yeah, where's the rest of you? Usually so much taller in your photo.
I thought you were much taller.
I thought you were bigger.
Yeah.
Like, this is all me. That's it. Yeah. That's all you're getting.
In a nice package.
Little package.
Yeah.
But just, I'm going to fangirl. This episode is about fangirling also. Because a lot of it is, my brain just goes into, oh my God, I'm sitting here with Janet Mbugua.
Oh my gosh. Thank you though.
So, shut that down. Focus. We had a purpose. We were doing this for
a reason. Purpose. I love that. You're like, rein yourself in.
Rein yourself in. Check yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe a little bit of an introduction so that if anyone hasn't caught you on here before or hasn't seen you anywhere, I don't know which hole they're hiding in also, but just in case, yeah. Maybe an introduction about who you are and what you do.
Okay. First of all, thank you. That's like I'm sweating and blushing and that's so sweet. Right. And you're a powerhouse too. I need you to know that. And I think what you're doing is so incredible.
We're getting there.
So thank you. We're getting there. But so Janet Mbugua, I was just about to go into my life journey. So you need to rein me in. Because I was going to be like, I grew up in Mombasa. Then you'll be like, no. We don't need you to go.
Come back like this.
We don't have 17 hours. But I'm a media personality is how I like to describe myself because will always be my first rodeo, my first love.
Right.
Literally started radio at 19. Wow. And then went to uni.
So you grew up in media.
I grew up in media. Yeah. It's all I've ever known.
Right.
It's the only work I've known and I'm super grateful for that. And then did TV for 10 years, both in Kenya and South Africa.
Okay.
As a news anchor, reporter and producer at KTN, ETV in South Africa, then Citizen in Kenya, which I feel really just changed my life. It was such a massive platform. And I think not knowing that also helped me.
Right. Yeah.
Just to allow myself to learn the craft and, diversify. And then as I was continuing at Citizen, social media was really coming up and found myself excited about that new platform and just discovering it. And so once I left, I was already pretty interested and invested in Instagram, for example, which I can honestly say single-handedly changed my life.
Okay.
Instagram single-handedly changed my life.
That's interesting.
It's so interesting because, again, who knew that it was the world's window into what you're doing?
Yeah.
And so began to do a lot of collaborations and work because of the posts I would do. And they weren't even so well curated. I think I was just being honest. Yeah. I was just being myself and talking about the issues that are important to me,
right,
from social impact to also lifestyle, whether it was fashion or whatever it was. And so, yes, so there's that. So digital, content creator, author. I did a book called My First Time, which used storytelling to demystify periods, and podcast of the same name a few years later. And Inua Dada Foundation is kind of the home of all the social impact and social justice work that I do. We have a center in Kariobangi now, and we've just started one in Kakamega.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so... Okay. And an activist.
Yeah.
I'm all those things.
All those things.
I normally say author, activist, media person. I think that's usually easier.
Yeah.
And a mom. So yeah.
Yeah. I just want to delve right into that, because I will fangirl, but I'll catch myself. Okay. Yeah. But delving right into Inua Dada, let's start there. What was the inspiration behind it? How did you come up to thinking, okay, I need to not only be a voice and I'm seen to talk about these things, I actually want to do something that makes a difference. What got you there?
I think it was being faced with the truth that came out of a story called Periods of Shame, which aired on Citizen TV, that just really showed this girls in far-reaching areas that didn't have access to products or information. And it was such an affront to the privilege that myself and a lot of my peers had. But I think the biggest heartbreak was, wait, they're missing out on school. Wait, they're falling pregnant. That's completely shifts their life. They pivot in the wrong direction. Right. And I just felt compelled to want to tell those stories and mainstream the conversation in a way that can also push for action, whether it's in policy, whether it's in behavioral change. And since then, I've been very passionate about storytelling. I think that's part of the content creation bit that I love. Yeah. Storytelling is one of the biggest platforms in which we can change the way things are seen and done. Right. And so that's what compelled me to start Inua Dada. It was initially two-pronged. Lobby for, change in policy and for budgetary allocation to be increased. Right. And 2014 was a fantastic year. I remember we did a Day of the Girl in partnership with the Ministry of Education at the time, when C.S. Kaimenyu was the minister. And they were just very inviting. I mean, they invited us to collaborate. Yeah. We did an event at KICC. It was a national event. Okay. And they tell us it's one of the first national events of Day of the Girl. Because it takes somebody in media or content to be like, this is what we'll do. Yeah. But it ended up being really brilliant. We had a lot of girls there because this was for them. Yeah. It was around Day of the Girl. So we wanted them to feel that this room and this space is for you. And then just continue to mainstream the conversation. So that's essentially what got me into it, was the work I did as a journalist and being in the newsroom and coming across this story. And, we come across so many stories in the newsroom. Being a journalist is its own form of activism. Right. But this one, I think, I felt so wronged on behalf of the girls and women, because I thought to myself, this is a natural biological function. They can't do anything about it, but they're being punished for it. Right. And that I think is what also keeps me going, is I just find it so unfair that because of that, or because you don't have access to pads, sometimes you have to have sex with somebody who has lied to you about protecting you, and then you get pregnant and now you have another thing to think about. It's heartbreaking. Right. And so that's what compelled me into it, is to say, let's find a way to mainstream this conversation. Let's find a way to open it up to everyone. Because sometimes it can feel like it's maybe either very technical or academic, but it's every day. Right. And kind of using the platform of media to do that. And at the time, Citizen were great, because every time there was an activation, they'd bring their cameras. Right. And so it mainstreams the conversation. Right. And even beyond that, if I was doing anything, we documented, my colleagues and I. Yeah. And then I just never stopped. And I still feel compelled to keep telling the stories, keep mainstreaming the conversation, and just collaborating with as many platforms like this, because the more voices, then the more change that we're likely to see. Right. Yeah. For those out there who just sit and say, okay, yes, you guys keep saying you're advocates, you are advocating for XYZ. On a day-to-day basis, what is advocacy? What is activism? How would you define? What's your definition of the two? I find it so funny, because I just found myself being called an advocate and activist because I was basically having the conversation. There was no name to it. Right. There was no label, nothing. Right. And it's interesting that it's people who would invite me in their spaces who'd be like, we'd like to invite you to talk about the advocacy. And I remember having to ask, like, the what?
The what? What is that?
Because in my mind, advocacy was for a select few, and they didn't look like me or sound like me.
And that's sort of the The reason why I'm asking this, because there'll be people watching and they go like, okay, so you advocate. What
does that even mean?
What is even, what?
And it's a very valid question. I think it's just speaking up on an issue. That's it. When the moment you use your voice or whatever platform you have, whether it's your phone, whether or not it's social media, and if it is, it could be WhatsApp, it could be talking at the dinner table with your family, it could be at the pub with your friends, or at the mall, or in your former primary school. As long as you're speaking up on an issue, then you're advocating.
Right.
And as long as you're sharing information, accurate, helpful.
Thank you.
Not harmful, but accurate, helpful information on an issue, then you're advocating. You're basically amplifying and raising awareness. That is advocacy. It's raising awareness on an issue.
Right.
How is it done? Whichever way advocacy works for you.
Right.
It can be a TikTok video. It can be a song. It can be a paper. It can be talking somewhere. It can be this. Like you're doing advocacy right now.
Right.
So that is what advocacy is defined as. And so I later came to know I was doing advocacy because I was talking about the issue on my platform, sharing resources and information. Activism, I think, because again, it's not until last year in November that I was invited to New York as an activist. And I was like, really? And I did this thing where I was like, I feel like there's other activists you could invite. I feel like there's other people, because again, in my mind, activism
there are people who are more of this definition.
Exactly.
Someone would fit into this better.
But yet, activism, again, is agitating for change. So then who are we not to be activists? And I think we have placed a lot on these different names and labels, and it can be daunting because if you've known somebody to be an activist for 15 years and you've just come in, there's a little imposter syndrome that comes in, like, but then how am I? Like the people are sharing that panel with in New York, I'm like, okay,
is this me? Am I sitting up here?
Am I sitting up here? But at the same time, what I loved about us, and we were from different countries. We were from Morocco and Ecuador, and it was such a nice group of women, and we ended up really bonding. And Afghanistan was is that we have a passion and desire to see things change. And that's what activism is. And how you do it is by, going the extra mile to push for that extra policy, to make that extra bit of noise, to join that march. Activism is participating in the act of advocacy. I think if the two were to be put in a sentence, it's also another form of advocacy. The two are very intertwined. I just see activism as a heightened form of it.
This is now an activity.
It's an activity
to
there
vocalization.
I like that. It's an activity attached to it, and you're agitating. You're like, things have to change and they need to change. And so, no, I could never have sat here or labeled myself those. They were bestowed upon me, and then I embraced them. And then I slowly began to understand why. Because if you can imagine, it was 10 years ago, I was just, I was an anchor in a newsroom. So advocacy and activism were not really, even though, interestingly enough, I have grown up fascinated by activists. Wangari Maathai remains. And it's the most starstruck I've ever been, was meeting her.
That must have been amazing.
Oh my gosh. And I just used to watch her.
Been silent.
I was silent.
And I'd just sit there and be like,
she was so, and I loved it because I had followed her journey. When I was a kid watching her. That's what that's what I remember, getting beaten up. And then I followed her journey. And so interestingly enough, I've always been drawn to activists. From the time I was really young. From the time Oprah started back in the 90s. And then Wangari Maathai. And when I was in college, I have a dream on my wall.
Nice.
So interestingly enough, I'm like, maybe then I started reading about everyone from the Black Panthers to Mau Mau. I guess I've always been drawn to activism. So maybe it was just, I don't know, I think it was just settling somewhere. And even my mom told me in high school, because I was a student leader and a house captain and all these things. And there was this one time I was pushing for something and I was demonized for it, and it broke me by the headmaster. And I remember breaking down crying because my dad had been called in basically to be told, your daughter.
Yeah, your daughter.
And I was sobbing in the car, and he just called my mom. He's like, okay, I've talked to her, but you talk to her. And she said, if you're going to do this, and that's when she told me it's persecution. And persecution comes when you're pushing for something that's right. And that's why it's never stopped me when I get persecuted. I'm like, it's because, and it doesn't mean I can't take criticism, because sometimes I've done things and I've had to learn not to do them. But persecution is, you're standing for the right thing and you're getting pushback. And even then I was 16, 17. I remember her saying that because I used to watch her get persecuted. So maybe it's not odd that I ended up coming back to this life, full circle. But that's advocacy and activism as I know it, as I've been in it.
Right.
I think, yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I've seen that Inua Dada does is making pads.
Yeah.
Take us through that journey. What's that like? Because again, privilege speaking, because a lot of people, the pads are available, they're in the stores, they're in the shops, you have variety.
Yeah.
You even sit there and go, this one gives me issues because, and then so I like this one, and then this one works better because, or, and then this one has nice colors.
I like the book. I feel like you're saying something about yourself, like, Doctor, but I love it. So you sit there like, all these options.
Yeah.
It's a valid question, what you've asked. And I like how you put it, like somebody will wonder, well, there's options.
Yeah.
But those options don't serve people who are, really underserved.
Exactly.
A lot of people, the reason period poverty exists is because you're forced to make a choice between a sanitary product and a meal for your family. Because sanitary products are expensive. Globally, it's an issue.
Yeah.
Like globally,
period tax.
Period tax. It's a whole thing. And again, it goes all the way back to policing and sexism, and it's really attached to that.
Right.
And so, while we were advocating a lot for change, COVID hit, and I remember immediately panicking for women and girls in lockdown. It was so immediate. I was like, oh no, they're not going to have pads. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
So started making a bit of noise on social media, like and so many people did it on their platforms. And I love that. People just kind of mobilized for food packages, etc. And I was really asking people, can we mobilize for period packs?
Yeah.
And somehow that ended up reaching the Pad Project, who we partner with, who then said, hey, we'd like to, we look at organizations like you, or voices like yours, and we send pad making machines that are then used in largely underserved communities where we train women to make pads. And essentially, we moved to making them available in the market, but initially they are donated. And so that's how the partnership came with the Pad Project. So the machine took forever to come, I guess, because of COVID. So it arrived in 2022. And that was on May 3rd, I'll never forget. And we set up and we worked with these incredible women. At the time we were in Korogosho, we just moved next door to Kariobangi, but trained underserved women. And for me, that's my joy. Is always when I go see them and kind of seeing where they've come from. Because these were women who were, victims of abuse, who were single moms who didn't have anything. And they've been able to earn through this program and educate their kids. And it's so funny how things like that just completely fulfill me. It can be one person changed, but it's one person closer to empowerment. So that's what happens. So we make them, and the machine can make upwards to 300, 400, 500 pieces a day.
Oh, wow.
So it produces quite a bit. We do a lot of donations in communities where we are, but we've also donated to Kilifi and Kisii and Kisumu, to so many places. And now we've just started a project in Kakamega with USAID Western Kenya Sanitation Program, WKSP, which also has the sanitation element attached to it. But we're also going to be having the same products that we make available there.
Oh, fantastic.
It's made a big difference. We're happy that the students who use them, and because the first thing I thought about was feedback, guys. We need to be ready to hear feedback about how is it making them feel? Is it comfortable? If it's causing any irritation, we have to go all the way back to the drawing board. Thankfully, that hasn't happened.
That's good.
The raw materials are sourced from different markets. The dream is to find similar ones here, but they are very high quality. But it's a very simple pad. I mean, we literally, it's handmade, used with a lot of care and cleanliness. And a lot of people, I use them. And I'm also really happy I can use, because I'd have been like, it would be a bummer if I can't use. Even though I use other products, other products that I've been used to, I still have to use what we're making to make sure. But the beauty is that it has put pads in the hands of girls. Girls who were previously absent are now present in school.
That's fabulous.
And those are things that you're like, it works. It's a tool. And people will keep saying things like, what about reusable? Yes, reusable is a fantastic solution. It just doesn't work everywhere right now. The dream and the goal is that we can all go reusable. But that would need access to water.
And that's the biggest thing.
And that's the
sanitation.
biggest thing.
That's the thing people forget, that reusable requires that you have clean water. And actually be able to clean your reusable product thoroughly.
And hang it.
And have it, the sun will help bleach, and like there's a lot of management around a reusable product, and again, a privilege around a reusable product, that we can't take that for granted.
I think so. And it's working in some places. I know some fellow menstrual champions who are having very impactful programs with them. We're using disposable, and who knows, we're also open to having a line of reusable, but I want to make sure that it's manageable.
Right.
And also a lot of the girls we speak to would rather not use reusable. That's their volition.
Right.
And so that's what the project is. And we complement it with advocacy programs like Tandika Leso, which is exactly what it is. We just sit down. It's a form of advocacy. It's community dialogue.
Right.
And I love the Leso.
I love that name.
Yeah, Tandika Leso Tuonge is the tagline.
Right.
I'll make more noise about it soon.
Yes,
I'm just like,
do.
why do I keep touching this? Sorry, guys. I've talked about it previously, but it's baking. But basically, the thing about everybody sitting on the ground is you're all equal.
You're all equal.
And that's what we found has worked. And I grew up in the coast and I'm obsessed with lesos. And I grew up with that culture of sitting down and having a conversation.
Right.
So we have found it a very effective advocacy tool. And also now, through podcasts and just keeping it alive. So we complement that with the pad making.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's my first time stories.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
How was that baby born?
Funny thing, it was born when my baby was in my belly.
Oh, really?
My second born.
Interesting.
There were two babies coming up at the same time.
Right.
I was pregnant with Mali, and this is going to sound so, not bizarre, but I was very sick in my first trimester. And then I started reflecting on what's happening in the world of menstrual health. Why are we still facing a lot of the issues you and I have discussed? Why is there still so much stigma? What is it that's not landing?
Right.
It was really bugging me.
Right.
And I thought maybe if we can do a campaign where people talk about their first time stories, we can make it relatable.
Right.
Because again, storytelling.
Right.
And then it kind of went from a digital campaign to, I was like, because I like to give myself work as if I don't have enough.
As if you don't have
enough. As if I don't have enough on my plate.
I was like, we have that in common.
We have that in common. Yeah, because the work you do and you're doing
just like, you're not overworking already. Let's this sounds fun. Let's do that as well.
Let's add another thing. So I was just like, we'll do a book. I had never done a book in my life. And again, I love the challenge.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want it to be a book so it can live in libraries so that students can see themselves in the book in Kenya for a long time. So then again, I started thinking about, I want there to be very diverse voices and faces. I may not be able to get absolutely everyone, which was now supposed to be the role of the podcast.
Right.
So tried to get together a diverse group. I think I ended up with about 60 folks.
Right.
And I loved it because I had a woman who's visually impaired. We don't think about her experience. A woman who was a former inmate. We don't think about periods behind bars.
Right.
We don't think about...
That's true.
Oh, and it's...
That's true.
And it's... I love that you've just had a moment.
I've had a moment. I'm like, hang on.
Yeah. And it's... And the injustice cuts across.
Right.
Girls with special needs. We don't think about them. And also people who are familiar. So there were some familiar faces there, Shaun Mundia, over 25 people, Wabosha, who were known. And it just ended up being such a passion project.
Right.
And I love that everyone loved participating in it. And of course, the content creator and me was like, they all have to wear white against the backdrop of red.
Right.
Again, giving myself so much work.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I call it my fourth child.
Right.
Or third.
The
foundation, the fourth.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And then the book. And so my first time, and I think it came out in 2020 in the beginning, and there was so much momentum, then COVID.
That's the thing. COVID stopped us in our tracks in so many different ways.
I was starting a countrywide tour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'd done Eldoret.
Right. Yeah.
I was going to do Mombasa, then Narok. So as we were planning for Mombasa, COVID hit.
Yeah.
But I very quickly, again, went online and we luckily sold out the first cycle. And now, it's funny, I was at a mall today and somebody from Textbook Center was like, oh, hey, Janet, your book.
Oh, nice.
So I was just like, are you pushing it? He's like, yeah. He's like, actually, it does move.
Yeah.
And that makes me happy because it just means people, again, are normalizing. So that's what my first time is. It's about pushing for menstrual justice one story at a time because it's about the stories.
Right.
So yes, everybody can talk about my first time this happened, but then your life offers a window into the menstrual experience of an athlete, of a former street girl. Those are some of the stories that are in the book. Of one of the oldest person we have in the book. My goodness, now she must be in her 80s.
Oh, really?
She was a child bride when she got her period. Imagine that.
Wow.
First you're traumatized because you're
somebody's bride.
Somebody's bride.
You're
and
barely
then now,
grown. You're barely... You don't even understand.
You don't even understand.
That yet.
It was her husband who was essentially trying to educate her on what was happening to her body. So...
Wow.
Period stories are just absolutely fascinating. Hearing how people learned, where they were, and then offering insights. And it's not all doom and gloom. Some of the people in the book were like, I was so happy. Another one says she syncs it with her moon, the moon time. She's all about the moon cycle and spirituality. So very diverse experiences that offer insights into our diverse menstrual experiences, but also the diverse menstrual challenges. And finally, there's men in the book. There's about 8 men. I got an imam. This is a Muslim man who calls Muslim men to prayer. Because religion has been a very big barrier. And it was, I wanted it to also not be an enemy. So he was there in his words saying, periods are not dirty. Periods are fine and they're healthy. And he actually said, the men who perpetuate that message don't understand the Quran. I was just like, say it louder for the people.
For people at the back.
I also had a pastor. I made sure to have voices like that. Had a chief. Had my dad.
Oh, nice.
He's just like, looks like you don't have a guka.
I'm the one.
Game.
It's me.
I was like, okay, Dad. So it was really a labor of love. And I think there'll be a revival of it soon because we did a second edition of African stories. But the pandemic and life has just made it a little hard to just kind of perfect the project. But it's something that we're going to come back to in a pretty big way. And I'm very excited to see the next chapter of my first time.
I was going to ask, is there going to be another volume? Are we going to see more stories?
The next volume is definitely, I interviewed women from across the continent. So we have stories from Nigeria and Rwanda and South Africa. But we haven't yet put it together and finessed it and released it. So that's what we're working on now.
Okay.
So yeah, it's exciting.
Right.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who... You've been in media, sure. You had that experience of being exposed from pretty much, the first time you ever worked. Let's put it like that. That's your first experience and your main experience. But there's a young girl sitting somewhere who's going, you know what? Even I can make change. Even me, if I can figure it out, what would you say to someone like that? Because you, when you were starting off, you at 19, could you have sat down and thought, I'm an author? I'm going to be a podcaster. I'm going to be a personality that is recognized across the continent, the globe at this point. How can she dream as big as that?
Wow. Wow, Dr. Claire.
I know, I asked the question.
You really do ask good questions. I think the idea is to do it because you love it. Because if you do it for any other reason, that will catch up with you.
Right.
Yes, the clout, as people call it, it can be nice. I actually did a video the other day, say, be good, not known. And it was Denzel who rocked me into that because this nice interview you did with Jamie Foxx. And he mentioned something about likes and comments, which are okay. Then Jamie Foxx asked him, so wait, so you're saying that just because somebody gets likes, I don't know how he framed it, but he's like, so that's not important. He's like, no, you see, the thing about being an actor is you need to be good, not known. Your brand is being good, not known. And that stuck with me.
That's powerful.
It was so powerful. He's like, fine, you can get all the likes, but are you good?
Right.
Ooh.
Right.
I replayed because I feel like he said something that I've been feeling almost my entire career. Is as much as it's come with all this attention and opportunity in the most beautiful way. And I'm honored and I'm privileged. I'm more invested in, am I doing the right thing? Am I passing across the right message?
Right.
Am I, it's not about pleasing. It's about, am I actually investing in this craft as a media person? Am I even finding new tools and ways to diversify my craft?
Right.
And in advocacy, am I amplifying this well enough collaboratively, etc.? So I would say to the young girl, you need to come into it with the right reasons. If your reason is clout, cool.
Yeah.
But if it catches up with you, are you okay with that?
Right.
Once the clout moves to somebody else,
right.
Which it does.
Yeah.
But to remain steadfast, you need to stay true to your calling. And that's what drives and motivates you. I could have quit a long time ago. There were so many times I'm like, why am I could just go to Leafy and model bikinis and I'll be fine. And I'll live the best life ever. Because I love the coast. I really considered moving. But I love it. And I believe in it. And I believe in the message. And I believe in how it can change and affect change.
Right.
And that's why I'll probably do it for the rest of my life.
Right.
Because the calling is so strong.
Yeah.
So I would say again to the girl, like, first of all, you are in the best position right now. You can start this career on your phone.
True.
You don't have to go for a screen test in a media house.
Right.
You can start it in your room.
How far have we come?
The
things we take for granted. Right?
And some of the most incredible people I've interacted with over the last few years are young people.
True.
I'm just blown away by them.
It's actually mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling.
It really
and so
is.
I'm like, the fact that you are in this generation means you have an inherent audacity. Tap into that. Then think about what you want to talk about and why you want to talk about it and what you want to do about it. And then start. Start by a small post. Start by talking to your friends about it. Start by something that's comfortable for you in your space. Because if starting a podcast sounds daunting, work backwards. If you still want to do the podcast, hold on to that dream. But work backwards.
It's speaking to
right here. right here. Dr. Claire knows this. Work backwards. What does it look like to start a podcast? It could look like, how do I sound? Use your phone. Talk to somebody who will be upfront with you. For me, it was my older brother when I was going into media and I was reading the news for him. He'd be like, no. The way you read the first time was fine. The second time, have that person who will help you get comfortable in it. And then slowly work towards it. It's not overnight. It was never overnight for any of us.
At all.
And it's sweeter that way.
I find it interesting that for me to be this comfortable having conversations on the podcast, it started from taking on opportunities like coming onto your podcast, for example.
And the different panels you've done.
Exactly. The panels, being invited on TV to talk about different sexual reproductive health topics and being nervous and feeling like I'm going to die, especially television cameras.
It's very intimidating.
My goodness.
The studio is intimidating.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the lights, the heat or the aircon, because it's one or the other. Either you're boiling to death or you guys are
freezing.
And then it's a thing that people take for granted. You think that, okay, you're just on TV. It's a skill. It's a skill you have to learn. And I feel because I kept putting myself in those situations, I am now confident enough to, even now as I'm still learning, I still have that openness to be like, okay, you can still learn. There's still a bit more skill. There's so much more opportunities and platforms and the likes that you can use to amplify your voice. But start somewhere. Start with what you have. And like you said, now it's your phone, right?
There you go. Start with what you have. I love how you've kind of explained that journey of being nervous, but being like, I'm just here and just keep pushing. And
be comfortable being uncomfortable.
100%, and do it afraid.
Right.
So start with what you have. Low-hanging fruit. What do you have in your hands? What do you have in your hands is, I know there's a biblical reference, but there's also on a practical level. What do you have in your hands?
Right.
Start there.
Right.
Yeah. And then work your way. We've seen how some of the most well-known TikTokers, for example, they just had their phone and the app.
True.
And they just kept going and kept evolving and experimenting.
Right.
Do the same thing. You don't have to have it figured out overnight. And then also, don't want to be an overnight sensation. It could work, but it may not work and it shouldn't break you.
True.
Yeah, sometimes overnight sensations take a lifetime.
True.
And then build towards even greater platforms should the opportunity arise. If it doesn't, the world is changing. Some of the greatest platforms, again, is your phone.
Right.
It doesn't have to be the way it was before. Opportunities are so many now. What really changed for me again was Goalkeepers in 2017. That also changed the way I saw advocacy.
Right.
Because it's Gates Foundation. I didn't really know much about it, but it fed me in so many ways because you're in a room, literally, because the Goalkeepers dinner and awards is the night before, which is very mind-blowing. The next day, you're in a room with anyone from, Trevor Noah to somebody who is an activist in Syria. Right. That's what was beautiful. It's an equalizer for activism. That's what I should call it. It's really a room that equalizes activists. It was still, for people like us who like pop culture, I was just like, is that Lily Allen?
Right, yeah.
Is that Rasha Michelle? Is
you're sitting there like, my mind, am I seeing what I'm seeing?
A few years later, at least and it's funny because in 2017, I remember sitting in the audience saying, I'm going to host one of the segments. And in 2022, I did.
Nice.
Work backwards.
Yeah.
I worked backwards.
Right.
And I remember telling myself, that's such a massive stage.
Right.
Who are you to be there in 5 years? And I told myself, it's 5 years. I don't know why I was so specific. I said, work backwards.
Yeah.
Hone your craft, do more events, become comfortable.
Yeah.
Literally 2022, I did an hour and it was one of the best hours of my life because it was Melinda Gates's hour.
Oh, wow.
And so it was just very profound. Yeah. I was just like, I know that I worked really hard to be on this stage today. Yeah. I know that because I worked backwards.
Yeah.
And it's my policy nowadays. I always set a goal, then I work backwards.
Right.
And if I don't achieve it, I pivot. It doesn't break me.
Yeah.
I just say, okay, what it did.
Because it comes with learning. It comes with lessons. Yeah. It's not, I never take for granted something that I didn't achieve, so to speak.
Yeah.
The journey there is part of in fact, a bigger part of it than the destination.
And I think a lot of people undermine the journey.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're going to have to, and at some point, the journey will call you.
True.
You went there. It will be like, come, let's
Please,
sit down.
I don't even know where you are.
I don't even know where you are, but
sit
come.
here.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation.
I see you doing this for a really long time, though.
Really?
Yeah, and like it evolving into like sessions.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like, I've written trust. You're speaking to the choir.
Speaking to the choir.
We have a vision board somewhere, and that's exactly what's been written.
Because it's a gift. Not a lot of people can do this, and you do it really well. Somebody can think you've done this like forever. So kudos.
But then I cannot not talk about the negative side.
Oh, yeah.
We can't sit here and paint
and be like, it's so
fluffy
nice.
cloud of wonderment that is activism, advocacy, being in the limelight, having any sort of following.
Yeah.
It does come with the negative side, because we've said this before, the naysayers and the trolls and the negative people have the louder voice. And the way, if I go into medical aspect of it, the way the human mind works, you can receive 100 likes, but the one hateful message is the one that lands. You'll quickly forget that there are other people who appreciate this work that I do.
Yeah.
You'll read one negative comment, you will see a DM that's intended to hurt you, and that's the one that lands. So how do you navigate the negativity? Because again, the louder your voice, especially for women's issues,
the more attacked
the more
you can be.
will get attacked.
I think it's also a journey. It doesn't change. I feel like, and you'd be surprised, even now I'm in a season of needing to, what's the word? I go through times when I kind of go into a bit of a healing cocoon. I can still be public, but internally I'm cocooning myself and preparing myself for the next level.
Right.
And I've really learned to respect my mental health. So if I need to pull back on social media, I've learned to take leave, because social media is my office. So
right.
August for a week and December or January for a week, and it's helped me.
Right.
People know. They're like, oh, is this when you're going? I'm like, yep.
This is that
time. And I tell them I'll see them on my birthday, because it's January 11th. And I always feel like it's a nice way to be like, Happy New Year, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to my twin brother. I had to learn that because I did 10 years nonstop in the newsroom and I felt like I burnt out. And the negativity can take its toll because you're also trying to figure out your identity.
True.
And I think you have to have an inner grit that you nurture every single day, almost like a plant.
Right.
Every day, go back and water that grit.
True.
Every day, just pour a little bit more, put a few seedlings in. And like, you're good, you're growing. Because that grit kind of like, it strengthens your spine. It doesn't mean the hate doesn't hurt. Cry about it. Feel it. Ride the wave. It's become my new favorite thing.
Right.
When my friends and I are going through something, we're like, we ride the wave. Ride it. Cry, feel it, ride the wave, because it means you're processing.
Right.
And then go back to that watered plant because it still stands. And you can tap into it and be like, you're still there. You're still present and holding me.
Yeah.
It's not easy for everyone. I mean, I've seen people really come undone and fall apart.
Yeah.
So I don't say this lightly, like, water your inner grit. Like,
no, it's actually, but I like that that's the message. It's a conscious thing you need to decide to work on.
That's what it is, intentionality.
Because people assume it's automatic.
No.
People assume that, okay, you're used to being on social media, so when the hate comes, you're fine.
Yeah.
That's not true.
It's like a muscle. Think of it as a muscle.
Yeah.
You just exercise it every day.
Yeah.
For anything in life, it's a muscle. The things that you don't like to do that you have to do, exercise it.
Right.
You know?
I tend to spin it a little bit.
Okay.
Because I can't remember who. It might have been Steve Harvey or it's somebody who said, if you're online, if your presence, you're known, but you don't have any haters, then you're doing something wrong.
True.
You're actually not, your message is not landing.
Yeah.
And it made me think about the naysayers in a positive light, so to speak, because at the very least, you're forcing me to engage in a conversation with somebody who has a different opinion.
I like that.
And as much as it's being presented in a hateful manner, if I engage you, it's a learning, it's an opportunity to teach.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times they come at you from a point of ignorance, from a point of, I know best, or I refuse to inform or educate myself, but I'm going to come with full force. Because again, that's the empty debes.
Empty debes. But I like what you're saying. Use it as a teachable moment.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah. So instead of, you do have to navigate, but again, it's like a skill. You have to exercise this muscle, but then you can sit back and go, hang on, I see what you've come with, but maybe let's talk about it like this.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the point that I'm trying to pass across. And at the very least, even if, because a lot of times I found if you engage and you give information, they back off, they disappear. But the thing that's the powerful thing that you've managed to do is, in case somebody else read through those comments and then saw your response, they've also learned.
I like that. You've educated someone.
Exactly.
So that's a very healthy perspective.
Right.
And I think things like that need to be encouraged more, the healthy perspectives.
Right.
And then where you feel like it's taking its toll, take a break.
Take a break, yeah.
Just take a... Naomi Osaka will forever be one of my heroes. She was just like, bye.
Yeah.
I don't need this.
I actually don't
need this because, you know, she knows maybe how badly she was struggling with whether it was anxiety or whatever.
Right.
And it's hard because sometimes when you're doing so well, people expect you to continue.
Yeah.
And you need to also communicate. If you're an influencer, communicate to clients that, hey, fine, I'll do the brand deal. I'm taking a week at this point.
Yeah.
They might renegotiate and say, no, do a few more days. But most people will agree with you.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then you protected yourself and your peace.
Yeah.
And I've had to make a lot of such decisions. I've had to pull back from doing work. I've had to deal with a lot of personal, public, you know, issues and things that happened.
Yeah.
But I was very intentional to be like, what does your mind need? What does your body need?
Right.
And then there's also 2 kids, you know, who are just like,
that.
anyway, are we going for candy?
Like, we don't care what your life looks like.
Yeah, I know. And also teaching them. So I go to Karura a lot with them and I'm teaching them about the grounding technique for anxiety. But dealing with the hate, it evolves. I feel like, you know, the higher levels, more demons.
That's true.
All those things.
That's true.
So,
and like you said, it's never not going to hurt because you are human. Yeah. And something that you said that I think is very profound is riding the wave. Yeah. Something about being overly connected, now that the internet has made us a global village, seems to have taught us that life is only good if we're happy. That life is only lifing.
Yeah.
If I am thriving, I am successful, I am happy. It forgets to tell you you're human.
Yeah.
And so sadness, a bit of downtime, sometimes you have anxiety, sometimes it's social anxiety. I'm very introverted. I say that and nobody believes me.
No, I can believe you. You're a bit like an ambivert, introvert, extrovert, but
no,
mostly,
there's nothing extroverted about me.
Dr. Shah is like, you didn't hear me. Nope. I am an introvert.
I said
I am.
what
but
I
that
said.
means you have a social battery.
Yes.
Like after this, you'll need to dip. Yeah, that's
and
me.
sometimes it's like a whole...
Yeah.
Ati, where are you?
Yeah. But good for you because... And people like you, and I respect that, and I love that. I've also learned that about myself, like my social battery, when it goes doop, doop.
Yeah, I have to respect that because I will start to mess up because now I'm over-engaging and it's not natural for me.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with Tracy. She's now with Capital FM.
Yeah.
And we were talking about confidence and building confidence. And sometimes it's about putting on a bit of a persona because especially so if you're an introvert, the thing of being known... It still spooks me. This one still spooks me.
Oh,
that I'll be shopping in a supermarket and somebody comes, hi, doctor.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God, I'm a big fan. I'm like, what do I do?
What do I do?
What do I do? Why are you talking to me?
Why are you here?
I'm in my pajamas.
Oh my gosh. Oh, yeah.
You want a selfie?
That's
I'm in my
funny.
pajamas, you know? So things like that, it becomes, okay, maybe as part of the learning, maybe one of the things I'm going to have to learn is when I have those kind of moments, I engage the personality that they are drawn to, that they know, because that's a part of me.
Yes.
It might not be my everyday me, but it's a part of me.
Yeah.
And so reach into that person, engage for the moment that you need to, and then go back and hide behind the aisle.
I feel like you'll be able to give really good tools, surprisingly.
Really?
Yeah, just based on how, like, I don't know, the combination of maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, whether it's the medical knowledge, but also, and social media.
Yeah.
It's few people who can give tools from a place of conviction like that.
Yeah.
And I really like what you've said because it is about that.
Yeah.
I know, like I have some events coming up and I'm already doing mental push-ups for them. Because I know, and sometimes I make a request and say, I don't want to come too early, but I can stay after. But I need to come when like everyone is seated. Because I know I'm predisposed to anxiety. I've gotten much better.
Right.
It was so bad. But I also know. And so nowadays I'm not afraid to, and it's very doable requests and people usually really respect it.
True.
I'm like, hey, if it starts at 7, I know I'm the person who can come at 6, but I'll come at 6:45, or I'll come at 6:30, but I'll be somewhere in the building, and then I'll walk into the room, but I'll stay back. So knowing who you are, I wish my younger self could just know like you're okay with your weird quirks and your intuition.
Right.
You're fine.
Yeah.
And those are the things I'd want younger people to know. Like you're okay. That voice that tells you you're an introvert, it's okay.
Right.
Nurture her or him. Or that voice that tells you you're predisposed to anxiety, find tools.
Right.
You don't have to go with the crowd, or you can, but know who you are in the crowd so that it doesn't consume you.
True.
And I kind of have been a bit solitary most of my life. Like I belong everywhere and nowhere. Like I'm just in different rooms and spaces.
Right.
And it's, it has its ups and downs, but it has more of its ups because I go as who I am, whichever room it is. Is it goalkeepers? I'll go as I am.
True.
Is it an activation in a school? I'll go as who I am.
Right.
That way, you're also not being an over chameleon. Because that catches up with you.
It does. It does. It's exhausting as well.
Yeah.
And more likely than not, it'll confuse even you because you forgot.
You'll be like, which chameleon was I? Which color was I?
Yeah. Which version am I presenting this day?
And don't be afraid to ask for help.
True.
And there's help online.
Yeah.
When you're feeling it, because there's a lot of people who are not with us anymore because people didn't affirm or validate.
Right.
And they couldn't find a space to be validated.
Right.
And I still have really dark days. Then as I sit here having the time of my life, I'm navigating a pretty difficult season right now, but I can still come and show up for this because I love it. I love the podcast. I love what you do. And I still know I need to tap into my tools to continue to navigate.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm also riding the wave.
Right.
So I'm not ignoring it. I'm not being like, that's not a thing. I'm like, it's actually a thing.
It's actually a thing.
It's affecting you.
Yeah.
And you're aware of that and you're riding the wave and you're doing the work. And the thing when I do that is I come out on the other side. So I'm present and I'm aware when I'm dealing with something.
Right.
And I kind of tap into tools.
Right.
And I just wish more people knew that, they can do the same and not feel alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because again, I could talk to you for
finally
days.
of Kenyans. And finally.
And finally.
Yeah.
And then we continue for 35 minutes.
Yeah.
But finally, one of the biggest reasons why I started this podcast in the first place is to demystify taboo topics. And sexual reproductive health, mental health topics, they're still taboo. There's still places and rooms and spaces and generational differences. There are places where you just can't have this conversation, or it's harder to have these conversations. In terms of your work in advocacy, in terms of being an activist, what advice would you have for navigating taboo conversations? Because not everybody will be as headstrong. I look at it as a challenge. I'm like, no, listen, I'm going to give you an ability to have this conversation. I'm going to step in your face a little bit, but we're going to let's just start to scratch the surface. But there are others who are completely the thought. They're
like, why are we even thinking about
what
this?
Are we even?
What are you saying?
What? You want me to talk about what? I do have, there'll be very sensitive conversations that I'll have, and some of which where, because of the stigma and the taboo, I'll have to provide anonymity to my guests because I have to respect the fact that there's so much stigma still on some of the topics that we'll be covering. But for me, it doesn't stop me. For you now, I'm sure you've learned how to, this is how we're going to navigate this space. But what advice do you have for someone who is still very timid, very afraid, has been indoctrinated with the narrative that this is something you don't talk about, that your sexual health, reproductive health, mental health are not spaces that you navigate and talk about in public?
That is such a valid, very important question. Wow. I feel like, because I was going to say, resources are available, but it's also, you have to be careful which resources to tap into.
Right.
But for somebody who's been indoctrinated and they're feeling like there's another conversation or there's a bigger conversation to this, I think it's to say it's not your fault if you hold true to the beliefs that you know.
Right.
That's something that you were raised knowing and that you believe in maybe for whatever reason. And if you listen to another perspective, it doesn't necessarily have to not derail you. Just think of it as having a new perspective.
Right. And
new perspectives shouldn't really harm you. They're just supposed to give you insights.
Right.
It's interesting because what did I say the other day? I consider myself, I don't know if it's accurate, a moderate left. Because I know there's a side of me that's moderate, but there's a very big side of me that's very kind of liberal and open. I think the word is open.
Right.
Who you are, how you present yourself, what you like, what you stand for. I love it. Let's have the conversation.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily sway me from things which I believe are, right, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I think it's in saying, number one, perspectives are different.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things that are very important to you.
Right.
If they're important to you, hold on to those, but understand though that you can also relearn and unlearn.
Sure.
If it's somebody who is faith-based, for example, I'm like, yeah, you can be and still talk about these issues. In fact, you should.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're no longer a faithful, person. It just means that you're not a faithful person who's choosing to understand this world that we live in,
right,
and trying to navigate. I feel like there's such a better answer I could give for this. I should send a voice note. I'll go home and send a voice note and be like, Dr. Claire, remember when you asked me and then I was rambling? Remember that time when I started rambling? This is not the answer.
This is what you're going to use.
This is what you need to use. Don't use the ramble. But at the end of the day, every single person has the ability to unlearn and relearn.
Right.
Even you.
Right.
Even you who's listening and watching, you do have it. It doesn't mean, oh my gosh, everything I've known until now is wrong. It's like, no.
Right.
You can have another perspective. And a lot of the time it shifts you into, I feel like new perspectives, healthy ones about our reality in this world are so important.
True.
Understand what's happening around you. Don't shield yourself from what is happening around you.
Yeah.
Understand it. So if somebody is listening and they're timid and they're like, oh, I don't know, why is it such a big conversation? Whatever it is, look into it.
Right.
If you really want start with a news source, because they hopefully try to be non-partisan.
Right.
So look into it.
Right.
Do a deep dive and say, whatever topic it is, I'm hearing it everywhere around me. Learn, educate yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And then still figure out where you sit with it.
True.
Educate yourself further. I'll never forget going down a rabbit hole of listening to Black Republicans.
Right.
I was just like,
first
I started
triggering,
with,
it's
so
triggering.
It was so triggering.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? I'm seeing them everywhere.
Right.
It doesn't mean that I'm going to believe because I'm still standing here being like, some of them, I'm like, really? But still, I challenged myself.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Yeah.
But I was like, you're going to listen to this 1 hour interview. You're gonna listen.
You're going to cringe. You're going to have to pause in some places, but you're going to listen so that you can start to understand.
Where are they coming from?
Right.
Doesn't mean I have to lean into it.
Yeah, or agree or change my mind. No.
Now I know better. When I was in Malaysia many years ago, one of my lecturers was transgender.
Right.
And I hadn't seen that before. And I took it as, oh my gosh, tell me more about yourself.
Yeah.
And that's where, this was like 2005.
Right.
So back then.
There's no information.
There's no information.
Even voices, because it's now that there's more voices behind, there's more activism helping people understand who they are and what they're going through.
Exactly.
But back then...
and I was just like, be teachable about it.
Right.
And even when I was, listening to her, I was teachable. I was just like, oh, okay, so what does it mean? Da, da, da. And so, again, it's just learning about the people around you. Not everyone is like you. Not everyone thinks like you.
Right.
Learn new perspectives. You can still hold your own about what you believe. But I think the biggest thing we need to preach is acceptance, not even tolerance.
Right.
Because tolerate is also like, okay, because I have to.
Yeah.
Acceptance is just, this is the world I live in.
Right.
These are the people who have their own views. These are the rights. These are the violations. These are the injustices, etc. I can still stand here and I've taken in this information.
Yeah.
Could make you an activist, could make you the same person, but it shifts your perspective and now you know better and you know more.
Right.
So don't be afraid to know.
Yeah.
And I hate the censorship that's put on things like comprehensive sex education.
Right.
It's heartbreaking because guess what you're doing?
On here. We've talked about it quite a bit.
What are you doing? There's a generation of people who don't have information and now HIV, AIDS among adolescent girls is on the rise. And so is teen pregnancy because you're censored.
Yeah.
I don't want to start ranting.
It's okay.
But
it's all right.
You said that's okay. Okay, Janet, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We're going to stop there.
Right.
But that's a fantastic question.
I'm glad we've had that conversation because, again, it's just powerful message is be prepared to unlearn and relearn.
Yeah.
Basically. And then accept that there is different opinions, different types of personalities, different people around you. It doesn't need to change who you are. But then if you're accepting of it, because you also can't sit on your high horse and say, you have to accept me and all my...
And then you're not accepting
and then you don't accept other people. So it's just as simple as that. Now to close, please tell us where we can engage with the foundation and with the book, the podcast.
My plugs.
Yes, plug away.
Yo, you can find me on, oh my God, cringe. I'm very active on my Instagram, so at official Janet Mbugua. And at Inua Dada. I would say those two across all social media except X.
Yeah.
I've not been on Twitter in like a year, and I'm fine.
Yeah, toxic spaces.
Toxic spaces. Inua Dada is, but Janet is on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and yeah, those are my platforms. My website and all are growing. There's something I'll be putting out soon, but you'll see that on my social media.
Okay.
And where it will live.
Right.
But for now, it's @official Janet Mbugua. You can find that on my social media pages.
Fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for engaging, being open enough to like share your story. And again, storytelling, the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
That's my big lesson from everything I've been doing recently is the power of storytelling. The more we humanize experiences, the better. The learnings are even easier because now it's relatable. Exactly. So thank you for coming on here and sharing.
Thank you. I love this platform. You've created such a safe space. I've had so much fun. Yay, and I've just found it enjoyable.
Such amazing.
Like, louder for the others. No, it's been really great. So yeah, no, I'm excited to hear it and I'm excited for what you'll do. I really am.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So we'll leave it there. And again, as always, please engage further by commenting. Anyone who doesn't feel comfortable enough to be that public, feel free to DM or email. All the information will be in the description box. Engage with us on social media. Again, everything will be in the description box. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention. And I look forward to seeing you again next week.